We're going to begin this hour with desperate calls for help from communities in rural California. They're still struggling after that severe winter storm brought several feet of snow to the mountains just east of Los Angeles.
Rescue teams are now going door to door to rescue those stranded. And for others, the process to dig through the snow has only just begun. With limited supplies and widespread damage, many say they're already exhausted. NBC News national correspondent Miguel Almaguer joins us now from Christine, California, with more on the severe conditions. Miguel, good morning.
Hey guys, good morning. This home, this neighborhood really is symbolic of what we're seeing all across the mountains a few hours outside of Los Angeles. There's actually several cars here behind me that are buried in snow. And as you can see here, the front lawn, just mounds of snow everywhere. There's actually concern here at this home that roof could collapse because of all of the weight of the snow. Now, the gentleman who lives here does finally have power and food, but it's going to take him days to dig out.
This morning, this is the race to reach the snowbound in Southern California. Emergency teams digging out trapped residents in the San Bernardino Mountains, just 80 miles east of L.A. Homes and cars submerged in snow drifts more than 9 feet tall.
Feels like an apocalyptic movie.
In the last 2 weeks alone, over 7 million cubic yards of snow cleared from state highways, the equivalent of more than 2,000 Olympic-sized swimming pools. But many side roads here are still undrivable.
Without us volunteers, there's no telling how many dead bodies we'd be recovering.
Middle school teacher Steve Gaskell serving as a literal lifeline, scaling the snow to deliver food and medications to stranded residents like Marissa Kupsick, including insulin for her uncle.
It's just scary not being able to get out.
How desperate did you need these supplies, including that insulin?
Oh, it's a matter of life or death for my uncle.
Pregnant mom Stephanie Gillis and her husband David were trapped in their home when she went into labor. Road closures preventing their midwives from arriving in time.
That's when things started to get a little stressful for me.
Luckily, Stephanie gave birth to a healthy baby girl, Audrey, without complications. Meantime, Northern California also facing dangerous conditions. Heavy snow in the Sierra Nevada, collapsing roofs and making travel treacherous. Yosemite National Park and over a dozen state parks closed indefinitely as Californians come together to help brave this historic winter wallop.
Now, there is some good news. Most of the major roads here have been plowed, but the side roads and so many driveways have not. Take a look at this Corvette. It is encased in snow and ice. It'll take weeks likely to dig this car out. Now, the other major concern in this area is the cold temperatures and folks without power and heat. That could be a life and death scenario. Joe, guys, back to you guys.
Praying people stay safe. Miguel Almaguer, thank you.
Let's stick with the weather and get your morning news now forecast.
Angie Lastman has more on what to expect this week. Good morning, Angie.
Good morning, guys. And for California, adding insult to injury, where we have a couple of systems that we're going to watch move onshore, bring more moisture, more snow, more rain. So let's start there. We'll start on the West Coast, where there's some showers working in, focused mainly for Northern California and points up into Washington and Oregon along the coast. We do have a couple of snow showers working through as well, but most of it is few and far between. We do have those winter weather alerts in effect, though, right now, and here's why. We have a couple of systems that are in work onshore. That first one is the culprit for these kind of scattered rain showers and snow showers that are focused again into Northern California and up into places like Portland and Seattle. But then we'll have a secondary system that starts to gear up, intensify, and really impact a whole lot more people here as we get into the end of the week. This system spreads some of that snow off to the Northern Rockies, so we'll add some snow to folks that live there. We'll see some rain showers, but the big push of moisture happens with this next system. We are looking at another atmospheric river event, so that means more moisture, more flooding concerns, more snow, all of that on the table for folks on the West Coast here as we get through Thursday and Friday. This is into Thursday. There's that system still offshore, but look at all this moisture that it's attached to it. That's going to swing in and add on to those totals of that they've already had, really incredible totals in some spots. Some of those spots, the Sierras, ending up with another 1 to 3 feet when it's all said and done through Thursday. Thursday. Mount Shasta, another 1 to 2 feet. And on top of that, with some of that, we'll see some melt. And we also have some rainfall that we're going to expect. So anywhere 1, maybe 2 inches in some of those locations along the coast. So we'll watch for the flooding concerns for folks there. Meanwhile, in the Northeast, some of those snow showers we saw this morning are ending, but we're going to be left with some chilly temperatures. New York, 41 degrees. It'll feel like the 30s. Rochester into the low 30s. It'll feel like the 20s. We do have some breezy conditions, so just make sure that you are prepared for that. Meanwhile, it's the opposite on the Gulf Coast, guys, where more record temperatures for them.
Not breezy there.
Yeah, that's the place to be, apparently.
Exactly.
Angie Lassman, thank you.
This morning, authorities are searching for the 4 Americans who were kidnapped in the Mexican border city of Matamoros. The FBI is offering $50,000 for the group's safe return. The kidnapping happened Friday and resulted in the death of 1 Mexican citizen. NBC News correspondent Morgan Chesky joins us now from Brownsville, Texas, which is just across the border from where the kidnapping happened. Morgan, good morning.
Yeah, Joe, good morning. And authorities say this may be a horrible case of mistaken identity. Officials say this group of 4 U.S. citizens had come here to Brownsville to cross over into Matamoros so one of those women could get a cosmetic procedure done. Instead, they drove right into the middle of a gunfight, ending in a terrifying kidnapping, at least part of which was caught on camera. 4 Americans kidnapped in a Mexican border city, and this morning, a law enforcement official tells NBC News this video captures part of the horrifying attack. In it, you see a gunman dragging people to a white pickup truck in Matamoros, Mexico, after authorities say the van carrying 4 U.S. citizens was caught in the crossfire of a deadly shootout. Family identified one of those victims as Latavia Washington McGee. Sharing, the group rented a van to drive from South Carolina to Brownsville, Texas. The plan, cross over for a cosmetic surgery. Zelandria Brown told the Associated Press that her younger brother, Zendell Brown, is also one of the victims. Now the whereabouts of all 4, unknown. The U.S. State Department placing both the city of Matamoros and the Mexican state of Tamaulipas under a level 4 travel warning since October, citing crime and kidnapping as reasons to avoid travel entirely.
It's devolved over the years to the point now where there is increasing drug-related violence, criminal organizations seeking to kidnap for ransom.
Following 2 Tamaulipas shootings that closed schools, the State Department issued a warning reminder just hours before the kidnapping took place.
This isn't an isolated situation.
Congressman Vicente Gonzalez, whose district includes Brownsville, calls this part of a larger trend towards cartel violence.
What are you telling your constituents in light of this recent kidnapping?
I'm telling them to be very careful in traveling across the border.
In Washington, the White House stressing they're following the situation closely.
Our thoughts are with the families of these individuals, and we stand ready to provide all appropriate consular assistance.
A U.S. official tells NBC authorities are concerned about the group's well-being, since videos appear to show some of them severely wounded.
It's a race to identify them so that we can establish contact and maybe begin negotiations here.
Now, the FBI says they are working hand in hand with Mexican authorities to try to track down these culprits and find those victims. We did see a large response on behalf of Mexican authorities following this crime. We're told investigators were gathering ballistic data, processing the vehicles involved, and trying to obtain as much surveillance video as possible at this scene, really just across the bridge from where I'm standing. The whereabouts of those 4 victims still unknown at this hour, but the Mexican president did say yesterday that he does believe this will all be resolved. Joe.
All right, Morgan, thank you so much. Overseas now, Ukraine's President Zelenskyy has vowed to keep defending, the eastern city of Bakhmut, the scene of one of the war's fiercest battles.
Russian forces, aided by the mercenary Wagner Group, have been pushing hard over the past few months to gain what could be an important foothold in the Donbas region.
NBC News foreign correspondent Matt Bradley joins us now with the latest on all this. So, Matt, we have been following the fighting in Bakhmut for some time now. Where do things stand right now? Do Ukrainians really think they can hold on to it?
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting because, of course, things stand more or less where they stood almost a year ago when this battle first started. As you mentioned, Joe, this has been one of the fiercest battles and one of the longest battles of what is now a war that has extended far beyond a year now. And it's been going on for almost that entire year. Now, we're seeing both sides almost evenly matched, losing a lot of materiel and a lot of personnel. This has been a very lethal fight, and yet both sides seem determined to hold on. Now, the state of the front is that it's the Wagner group on the Russian side that has been leading this fight, and we heard that is a group that is essentially a private army that is led by an oligarch who is a close friend of Vladimir Putin. This man, and this is a name to remember, you've probably heard this before, his name is Yevgeny Prigozhin, and he has been complaining, publicly airing his grievances with the Kremlin and with the Ministry of Defense in Russia for not providing his private army with enough weapons, he says, to fight off the Ukrainians. He says that this could be something like treason or sabotage, that the Ukrainian military doesn't want to see him, the Russian military doesn't want to see his private army succeed, where the Russian military has shown itself time and time again to have failed. So this fight for Bakhmut, it's not just a fight about Russian prestige in taking a city, which they haven't done for nearly the past year. This is about Prigozhin himself, elevating himself within the ranks of the military and the defense establishment in the Kremlin. And in doing so, he's opening up a lot of fissures within the Kremlin and within the leadership. Guys?
And Matt, the Russians clearly believe this would be an important gain. Their defense minister said it would allow for further offensive action inside Ukraine. But interestingly, the U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin appeared to actually downplay its significance while on tour in the Middle East. So what exactly did he say about it?
Yeah, I mean, Lloyd Austin, along with much of the U.S. and really all the Western defense establishment, Western military analysts, everybody who looks at this battle wonders why on both the Ukrainian and the Russian sides, both sides are willing to lose so many men and materiel to fight for a city, Bakhmut, that isn't necessarily seen as particularly important or strategically necessary to win what is Russia's goal of taking most of the eastern Donbass region. There's two major provinces in the eastern part of the country that for many people there who live there, they do identify as Russian. So, this is a battle that has been going on for so long, and it seems like it's taken on an outsized proportion. And, Lloyd Austin made these comments just the other day. Here's what he said.
If the Ukrainians decide to reposition in some of the terrain that's west of Bakhmut, I would not view that as an operational or a strategic setback. I think it's more of a symbolic value than it is strategic and operational value. So the fall of Bakhmut won't necessarily mean that the Russians have changed the tide of this fight.
Well, then, so as you can see, this is why this comment from President Volodymyr Zelenskyy and the Ukrainians was so interesting, because you have the Westerners, the main patrons, the U.S., the main patrons of the Ukrainian military in the whole war fighting against the Russians, whispering in the Ukrainians' ears, saying, give up Bakhmut. Don't fight for it. You're losing too much for too little. Guys?
All right, Matt Bradley. Matt, thank you so much.
Back in the U.S., some scary moments aboard a flight into Boston. Authorities say a passenger on board a United plane tried to open an emergency door mid-flight and then allegedly attacked a flight attendant.
NBC News correspondent Emily Aketa has more on this terrifying story.
Hey there. The alarming incident played out just minutes before the plane was set to land in Boston. Federal prosecutors say that passenger repeatedly tried to stab a flight attendant, but thankfully some fast-acting passengers and crew members jumped in to stop him.
This morning, a United Airlines passenger is facing federal charges following a terrifying incident on board a Boston-bound flight.
I will kill every man on this plane.
According to court documents, about 45 minutes before landing the cross-country trip from Los Angeles, the flight crew was notified that an emergency exit door on the plane had been disarmed. A flight attendant discovered the door's handle had been moved out of the fully locked position. Another flight attendant reporting 33-year-old Francisco Torres had been near the door, leading the crew to believe he had tampered with it. When confronted, Torres allegedly responded, asking if there were cameras to prove it. Witnesses say that's when he got out of his seat, approached two flight attendants in the aisle, and allegedly attempted to stab one of them in the neck 3 times with a broken metal spoon.
We started hearing his voice get louder and louder. He was clearly agitated.
Passengers on board the plane, seen in this video shared by witness Lisa Olson, tackled and restrained the suspect.
There were probably 4 or 5 men that restrained him on the ground.
Torres later admitting to investigators he knew if he opened the door, many people would die. Also claiming self-defense during the altercation, saying he made the weapon on board in the bathroom.
Just how unusual is this degree of violence?
It's extraordinarily unusual, but it doesn't take that much to take a lot of everyday items and turn them into weapons.
It comes as we're learning new details about Torres. In 2015, he was ordered by a court to undergo a psychiatric evaluation, according to a lawsuit he filed against a hospital years later, in which he alleged he was misdiagnosed with a mental health disorder. In that suit, Torres, who represented himself, sought $50 billion and a license to carry and use, if necessary, any type concealed or unconcealed firearms and explosives on any commercial transports. The case was later dismissed. United Airlines says it has zero tolerance for any type of violence on our flights, adding this customer will be banned from flying on United pending an investigation.
If convicted, Torres could face life in prison. The Flight Attendants Union continues to call on Congress to require a list of nationally banned disruptive passengers and says incidents like this put everyone at risk. Back to you.
Emily, thanks so much.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.